People need people, especially now because we've been cut off from everybody for so long. And it's not just the elderly. It's all of us need people. It's that friendly smile. It's that pat on the back. It's that just, hey, how you doing? Those things go a long way.
That was Mark Edward Dickerson. Adopted as an infant, he has made helping others his life's calling. He and his husband, Chef Kevin, own a cafe and catering business that permits them to feed the Nashville community in so many ways. His calling to help others is very unique, and as a couple, their circle of friends is almost as big as their generosity and their hearts. Everyone's story has such unique chapters, and when you venture beneath the surface, you learn so much more. Give this podcast a listen to learn the why behind all of Mark Edward Dickerson's acts of kindness.
I'm Sally Hussey, the CEO of 50 Forward, and we elected to launch this podcast because we know older adults have such inspiring stories and wisdom worth sharing. We have now all learned that social connections are critical to our well-being. This podcast is made possible by 50 Forward, the leading resource for adults 50 plus in Middle Tennessee who seek to live longer, more fulfilling lives.
You're listening to Squeeze the Day, where we talk to extraordinary people over the age of 50 who are living their best life now. Their stories of a well-lived life are both inspiring and encouraging to all of us as we seek to navigate a meaningful and purpose-driven second chapter in our life. Today's Squeeze the Day is brought to you by the All of Us Research Program from the National Institutes of Health. Learn how you can help change the future of health by participating in the program. Visit www.joinallofus.org to learn more. I'm Susan Sizemore, Communications Director for 50 Forward, so let's get started. Mark, will you tell us a bit about your roots and your upbringing?
Well, I was actually born in Birkenfeld, Germany, and I was adopted there. And my adoptive mother and father were stationed in the Army over there, and my mother had not been able to have children, and so she went through the Catholic Church and was able to get me. And we stayed there just probably through my adopted father's time of service, and then we came back to the United States, living in Atlanta, and that's where I was naturalized as a U.S. citizen, and then we moved on into Tennessee. But Tennessee's pretty much been my home, I'll call it home, all my life.
I had no idea that you were adopted, and somewhere along the line in conversations and in some research, I discovered that fact, and I think that gives a total different aspect to our conversation. You also recently learned you have a sister, and I want you to tell us a bit about that discovery.
It was through the crazy internet, and people say that crazy things happen through the internet. So this lady just messaged me and she says, I'm your sister. And I thought, yeah, sure you are. And I told Kevin about it, and he says, well, ask her like a crazy question that only you would know the answer to. So, I started asking her like these random questions that maybe only me and someone else might know, and she knew the answers to these things. So we started a conversation, and true enough, she was my adopted father's, one of his daughters. So she had found me through the internet. And so it was really quite special being adopted. I'd never had siblings, and so finding my stepsister, I call her my sister, and it's strange if you see a picture of us both. We look alike, we have the same mannerisms, we have the same tastes, and I really feel like it was a higher power that kind of brought us together, so it was really special.
I can only imagine, and I'm curious to know, since you not only discovered that you had a sister or a sibling later in life, were you all using a 23andMe or one of those programs where you could find through DNA sampling a little bit better about one another?
No, Susan, I never really had a curiosity about my birth family at all. My adoptive mother passed about 10 years ago. So once she passed away, I am more curious now, and I have done the 23andMe, but Michelle actually found me just through the internet, searching Mark Edward Dickerson, and, found me that way.
So interesting. What did we do before the internet? I'm sure it's like everything else,
I
a
know.
blessing and a curse, but
Yeah.
I wonder how much time it took her to search. Do you know?
I don't think it took her that long. Now, I have now tried to search because I know my name. I wasn't Mark Edward Dickerson. My name was Roland Thomas Barthel. So when I was adopted, my mother changed my name. And so I have my birth mother's name. I have my name. I have where I was born. And it's on the weirdest, it's like on a piece of translucent onion skin looking paper. That's my birth certificate. And then I have a naturalization papers but I have a lot of things at my fingertips. It just seems like it's been harder for me to locate anybody in my birth family. I have done a little looking. I did the 23andMe, and it has shown people not direct connections. I guess they're down in the genealogy in the tree, and I've tried to reach out to them, but I guess they're doing what I did when I got this random message from somebody on the internet, like, yeah, who is this? But so I'll keep kind of hopeful with that. I'd love to go back to Germany one day. The 23andMe showed me that I'm not much German, though. My background does have more Italian and things like that in it. So I figure my name was Roland Thomas Barthel, and her name was Katrina Barthel. So she definitely probably was German, and then possibly got with a serviceman, and that's how I became.
Very, very interesting. And to have those different roots. And the minute you said so much Italian, I thought, let's talk a little bit about business and what you do for a living, because you're not only a small business owner, but there are challenges in that world. But let's talk about your cafe and catering.
It's the Donaldson Cafe and Catering, and actually Donaldson Cafe and Catering, it used to have another name, and Kevin, my husband, has been here working in that kitchen there for probably close to 15 plus years. And the owner of that business decided to step away and gave Kevin the opportunity to come forward and take over the business. So about 5 years ago, that is when we took over kind of as a couple and started just hit the ground running and started shaking things up over here. So it's been a lot of fun. There have been some challenges now with COVID and now with food pricing and things like that. But, we never closed down, not one day during the pandemic, not once.
That is amazing.
Yeah. When that all started, it was right after the tornado had hit in the Donaldson area. So the tornadoes hit, and that was in March, and I think everything closed down about in April. So we were just kind of like, what can we do? How can we help? And we just thought, what do? We feed people, and that's what we started doing. We started feeding it was the first responders and the people helping the families that had been affected by the tornadoes. And then we went straight into the pandemic, and we started identifying seniors within our community and others within our community who were just scared to get out, who were, didn't want to go to the grocery store, couldn't, and we started feeding them. And we continue to do that today.
So that brings to mind a couple of things, as a small business owner and prices are going up and you're doing your best to survive, but you're also feeding the community literally and figuratively so much. Why is that so important to you?
It's just our way of giving back, I guess, our way of giving back to the community. It makes us feel good. It has gotten quite costly. And, Kevin, a lot of times he'll look at me and I'll say, well, we had quite a bit of this special that we're doing today of baked ham. Where did it all go? And he'll say, well, I had 20 outbound meals going out today. So we have to take that into account. Those go out the door without anything really coming in. So, it has gotten to be a challenge, but it's something we continue to do. It feeds us, I think.
That's a really cool statement, too, because, in a lot of ways, we talk, in the nonprofit sector about how by giving you receive so much. And oftentimes, I think people look to volunteer because they really don't, maybe they've retired or they're not quite sure how to help. But 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10 people will say something about, they get back way more than they give.
Yep. It does. It does. It really does give back to us. And it's when we're sitting with that young person or that aged senior, and we're sitting there, we take that meal in, and I'll remember one that I went to about a couple of weeks ago, and I knocked on her door, and I looked in, and she was sitting in the chair, and I said, "Hey, can I bring this? Can I bring your meal in there to you?" And she said, "Yeah." She tried to get up, she really couldn't. She was on a walker. I walked over, I handed her a meal. I said, "Can I get you a spoon?" And she said, "Yeah, it's right there in my kitchen." So, and I was probably the only person she had seen that day, and so that definitely feeds me. The problem is, though, I want to sit down, I want to talk to her. I want to spend more time than I can. But, we find time to do that too. We have drivers that do our outbound meals. It's not delivered by just some random person. These are people, friends of ours really, who have started delivering these outbound meals for us. And they've really have become close to the people that they're delivering to. They're almost like family with them. And it's almost like a well check for some of these people. They go to their house, they check on them. If they don't answer, they call us, they call the family. And we did have a situation to where one of our drivers, the woman that we delivered to, had fallen in her house. We got a hold of the family. They were able to get, so good outcome there.
You've touched on a point that across the globe, throughout the nation, of course, people need company. They need people to visit with. They need people to check on them and bring them food. What would you say to that? Because I think you're experiencing that firsthand.
They do. People need people, especially now because we've been cut off from everybody for so long. And it's not just the elderly. It's all of us need people. It's that friendly smile. It's that pat on the back. It's that just, "Hey, how you doing?" Things like that really mean something to me too. As I'm walking in the grocery store and someone takes that minute to speak and say, "Hey, how are you today?" Maybe it's just a security guard at the front desk, but those things go a long way.
So I've read that your personal mission is to feed and help people who are hungry, and especially those who are in need or in crisis. How did that come about? Is that something your parents instilled in you?
My adopted mother, she to me was my mother. Her death was really tough for me. And I think, when she passed about 10 years ago, it almost had me kind of spiral a little bit down. But I think she instilled that cooking and that, well, I'll tell you what she said. She said, food is comfort food. I can remember her saying that so much, and she would take the dishes over to the church ladies, or somebody would be getting married, or someone would pass away and she'd cook the cake or bake the casserole, and it's comfort food. And I can always remember her saying that. And so I guess that kind of got instilled in me. That's something that I can do that's kind of simple, but man, it really goes a long way. And it feeds you inside and it feeds you outside too. So I really like that. I like the saying comfort food, and I like to think of that's what our food is. It nourishes you, and then we help to kind of nourish you.
So you and your husband, Kevin, have been hosting the Truly Thankful Thanksgiving for years. And I'm curious, what inspired you to do that?
That was kind of simple too, Susan. We were sitting at home one day, and both of the kids were grown. They had gone out on their own. One had just turned 18. The other one was in the service. And, we'd cleaned up the kitchen. We were sitting there. The next day was Thanksgiving, and we didn't have anything to do. Mm-hmm. And it was like, Hey, I said, well, let's cook a turkey. And I'm like, no, I don't want to dirty the kitchen up. It's clean here at the house. I said, let's go down to the center. We'll go down there. We'll cook a turkey. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm just going to post it on the internet. I said, I'll post anybody that doesn't have a plate or a place to go, come see us. Well, that was the beginning of something magical. It truly, truly was. Yes, we feed the hungry, but yes, we have fed. It's a magical thing. It really is. I have fed down at the mission. It's not a mission experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. We have music. It's just such a fellowship, what we've created, and I'm really proud of it. This was our 5th year last year. We served over 1,000 people. We have great community support, people within our community that help us make that possible. And it's unbelievable. So we started that about 5 years ago, and then we actually started the Easter feeding that we do. We started that there when the pandemic took a hold of us.
So that also, the Easter was kind of an outcropping of the fact that we had all been in COVID lockdown for so long, right? And so after Thanksgiving, you decided to add Easter?
I've lost those years. What was it? I mean, when we shut down like that. So it was the year that we shut down. We had the tornado that year. That was in March. And then in April was Easter. We didn't know what to do. I mean, everybody was so downtrodden and scared and frightened. We didn't know what to do. So we wanted to feed. Well, we really couldn't because everything was locked down. What do we do? How do we do it? Well, so we decided we'd do it like a drive-through. So we just had people drive through the parking lot, and we boxed up the meals, ham, potato salad, coconut cake, and they picked it up. And I think the first year we did about 300 people. This past Easter, which was our third year, we did almost 900. It's incredible.
Those are staggering numbers. And tell us about community supporters and friends and allies who have all rallied behind this cause.
We have some great supporters within our community. I mean, Donaldson is such a great community. We have places like Packard's BP, Air Trust HVAC. We have a couple of the churches around town that continuously come out and support. And then it's the people here where we work that when they see things like that happen, and they'll come up and just slip this in your hand and say, hey, use this towards your Easter dinner, or use this towards Thanksgiving dinner. And these are people who really don't have it, but they want to help others too. So we live in a community here, and I don't think it's just Donaldson. I think it's overall. Donaldson is a great community, but Nashville is a great city, and, I feel very lucky to be here.
I find it really interesting, too, because some of the individuals you referenced or their businesses, they're just small, community-owned, family-run businesses, too, who give back and have such tremendous reputations because of that.
Absolutely. Air Trust HVAC, the gentleman who owns that, he comes in occasionally and he'll say, let me buy lunch. And I'll say, okay. So he'll either be buying it for the guys up at Packard's, or he'll buy it for the whole community. He'll say, okay, everybody's got lunch on me today. And so, I mean, and at the end of the day, he comes in and settles his bill. I mean, he's just incredible. And if it hadn't have been for people like that supporting us through the pandemic, I don't know that we would have made it. We were able to stay open, but those little bumps like that, when he'd come in and say, hey, do all your meals today on me, it really, really helped. And that is the kind of people that we have within this community.
Yeah, and to your point, I bet there are communities all over the world who are like that, who support one another. But it's important to share those stories because there's a lot of negativity that also is really prevalent today. And you sharing the uplifting stories, I think, it's super important. I want to talk a little bit about nurturing and supporting people with disabilities, those who have challenges. I know that that's really important to you and specifically some of the students at the Tennessee School for the Blind, but you might have other groups you want to reference as well. And when did that begin and how?
That began about 3 years ago. And I noticed this group of young people, and they were coming into 50 Forward, which is where our cafe is located. They were coming in every day, and I would see them walk through the auditorium, and they were pushing like a cleaning cart, and I was kind of wondering what they're doing, and they just kind of were trotting along, just kind of with their heads down. And so I went over and I asked the guy, I said, what are y'all doing? And he said, we're here cleaning. We clean the exercise equipment. I said, you do? And so we got to talk, and I said, they look like they could about do anything. I said, could they do work in our cafe or our kitchen if we had jobs that they could do? He said, I don't know why not. He said, let me ask, some of the workplace development people there at TSB. And so he did. He came back to me. He said, yes, they could. And so we kind of started that workplace connection there. And we had about 3 that would come in a group every day, 5 days a week, and work with us. And Susan, I'm sure you've met some of them. You've seen them in our kitchen working. You've heard about them. These young people are incredible. We've got a young man working with us now. He's working with us for the summer. We've been able to retain him through the summer. He lives in Smyrna, and TSB was able to get a ride share to get from Laverne to Nashville because we didn't think we were going to be able to find him transportation. So he's taking a ride share in every morning. He's here by 8 o'clock in the morning. He works from 8 to 2, 5 days a week. He is incredible. He's visually impaired, but there's nothing this young man cannot do. I mean, Truly. He graduated this year. He was the salutatorian. He was the most achieved in the school. I mean, these are young people who just have to be given a chance. And yes, 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 I am very passionate about them because they're able, they're willing, they just need to be given a chance. We also work with Metro's Exceptional Education Department as well. They also have young people that come in and work with us through the school year. But it has turned out to be, it's one of those things, kind of something that feeds us too. There's a young lady that works with us. Her name is Janice, and she came in visually impaired as well. She's got about the side of a pinhole. It's about all the vision she can see. But she would never laugh. She would never, there was just no interaction. And to hear her laugh and cut up with us now, just unbelievable. She helps us dish up during the play. She'll be here when we do this dinner show that we're fixing to start Thursday here at the Larry Keaton Theater. She helps us during dish up. And her and I just have a little thing. We're working on the line together, and so I will dish up, say it's green beans, and I'll just pass the plate to her and kind of tap her with my arm as she puts the roll on the plate, and out it goes. It's just, you just got to give them a chance. You just got to tell them how. They do it.
I love to hear your passion and the way you get so fired up about really helping others, but also it's almost a parental role when it comes to kind of mentoring and nurturing other folks, and it's really a gift. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about you and Chef Kevin, your longtime partner, but also now your husband, and how you two came to be a couple.
We actually met here in Nashville. We were both working. There's a local hotel right here in the area, right near the Marriott Hotel, right up here on the hill, you would say. And that's where Kevin and I met. He was working as a chef there, and I was working as a room service waiter. And that's where we met. He was serving up dishes on the line, and I would always get my food a little bit quicker than everybody else. So that's where we met, and that's where it started. And we've been together. This year will be 40 years. So,
wow.
Nashville was a different place then. So even with the adoption of our children, two guys couldn't adopt children. We had to do a single parent adoption. When we got to the adoption, we couldn't find a judge who would hear it. So we had to hire an attorney to help us find a judge, and we were able to finally. And so it turned out to be the magical and beautiful experience that it should have been. But it was a challenge.
How interesting. I think sharing those stories helps kind of illuminate, really, everyone's life and their story is a little different. But I also think it sheds light on where we were then, and today things are a little bit different.
Right. Today we can get married, and we did. So about 3 years ago, and what better place to do it than the place where we work? And, we were able to invite, seniors. You might think, hey, they're not going to be really open to two guys being in here getting married. They all turned out, and it was such a wonderful evening. And I would just invite everybody to come out. It's just such a wonderful, loving community, this place where we work, these people that we work with. So I would invite everybody to come down and get a piece of this.
So you're speaking specifically about one of the 50 Forward centers in Donaldson, and I think your service, if I remember correctly, it was in the former gymnasium of the Donaldson Elementary School, and I believe it was standing room only. There was a huge crowd.
It was. And our youngest son, who was in his dress blues because he was in ROTC, he walked us down the aisle, and then our oldest son was actually online with us. He was stationed not overseas. I think he was at his place of duty here, but him and his wife were online with us on the video there. So it was wonderful. And then where did we go that night to spend the night? We went back where we met, to the Marriott.
And how special.
Yeah, it was. It was really great. And I told them, and they gave us the room complimentary for the night. So it was a special, special night.
So will you talk a little bit about being a foster parent and, that experience?
I said early on that I always wanted to be a parent. They say that women have that maternal thing, and a lot of us guys don't have it. I think now with this metrosexual stuff, a lot more men are more maternal and giving and loving and caring, and we fix our hair and we wax our ears and our, all of these things. And so, but I just knew I just had that maternal thing going on. I wanted to be a dad. And so Kevin and I talked about it, and he wasn't really resistant. I can remember him diligently going to every class because we had to go through a series of, it was called MAP training. We had to go to these classes, and then after a certain period of time, you were certified to be a foster parent. And so we got our home opened up, and it was all done here local. We didn't go to anywhere else to adopt. We wanted to do it right here if we were able to do it. We didn't know that foster parenting would work into adoption, but we had been told that, foster parent would be a good place to start. And there's all kinds of children who come into foster care. You get some that might be fire starters, or some that are sexually abused, or some that, might have disabilities. And the less restrictions you put on the type of children you'll take in, the more calls you'll get. So it seemed like we got a lot of calls. We had about 28 children who came into our home and stayed. And, there were a couple of those that I really thought those were going to be our babies. And it wasn't the worst case because these little boys ended up going to a great foster family and were adopted. But the ones that I thought, they went back to a mother, then they came back into foster care, and then they were adopted out. But one thing that I believe it was called a Brian A. Act that was passed, where if a child had been into foster care for 6 months or longer, the home that they were placed in was the one that had preferential choice in adopting them. So when John, our oldest, came open, here's this beautiful, blonde-headed, blue-eyed baby boy. And the department wanted to move him. They wanted to move him out. They wanted to put him into the adoption system. But luckily, because of that, we were able to petition and say, no, we've had him for 6 months. He's happy. He's healthy. He's in a good home. And we were able to then petition and adopt. But that was just one of the struggles we had in the adoption, and then trying to find an attorney who would support that. And we were able to find a judge locally who did the first one. And then when we adopted the next child about 10 years later, we kind of went through the same thing again. It was a little bit more progressive by then, so we didn't have as much trouble.
Are you grandparents now?
Yep. We've got the third one's on the way.
Wow.
Both of our boys came out of homes that there were some allegations of addiction and abuse. And both of our sons have found their birth mothers recently. And
Wow.
I never thought I would have been glad to meet these women but I really was. And I always talked about their mothers. I let the boys know that they had a mother. Their mother gave them up because they loved them, not because they didn't want them or they could, So both of their mothers, they were able to find them again through this circus here we're on, through the internet. But it has been exactly what they needed. Both boys had struggled just a little bit. And so we gave them the two dads, but there was just that maternal thing, that mom that they did need, and now that's kind of been fulfilled. And I can say I'm so proud of both of their mothers because they've now conquered any demons that they had carried around with them, and they're just doing wonderfully, and both of the boys are too, and they're having grandbabies.
That's such a gift, so exciting. And I have to say that even as you speak about them finding their birth mothers, even the nurturing part of you comes forward in a way that is so special in that you're proud and happy of those women too for the decisions they made and where they are today, which that takes a lot to say that.
It does, because there's been a part of me that it's been tough at times. This has been the first year with Bobby, who, our youngest son, who has, like he was with his mother for Mother's Day. And, I was telling Kevin, I said, this is the first Mother's Day she's had him, and I'm not his mother. I realized those things. We were wonderful parents to both of our boys, and I feel very blessed that God brought them into our lives.
So let's talk a tiny bit about advice that your parents or an older adult might have shared with you that at the time when you were much younger, you thought that was silly, but now it rings true in your everyday life.
If you don't have something nice to say about somebody, don't say anything at all. That was my mother. She said that, and I said it to the kids. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. And, Kevin will be going down the road fussing about somebody's drive. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say nothing at all. But that holds true with a lot of things sometimes. Even in our world, sometimes it's filled sometimes with so much crap. And sometimes we just got to look at the good. And that's kind of what your show is doing. It's kind of that squeeze thing. And I'm glad you had me.
So am I. So what is it that you do to squeeze the day?
I think just staying in the moment, just living, not worrying about tomorrow, because I always wanted to be the fixer and taking care of everybody. I can do this. I can take care of Susan. I can take care of my kids. There's somebody here that I just got to stay right now, right present for today, and just live in the moment and not worry about tomorrow and not worry about all those other things that a lot of times can take care of themselves if I'll just let them. And so just staying in the moment and being present.
That's wise advice. I want to thank you for joining us today. What an amazing life of leadership we're witnessing from interviews and stories such as yours. Now we challenge everyone listening to go squeeze the day.